What would happen if the most influential person in the world paused everything to listen to a little girl's question about faith? You might think you know the answer, but trust me, it's not what you're expecting. It was an event packed with the usual spectacle, cameras flashing, speeches delivered, and an air of formality that kept everyone in their places. Among the sea of attendees, a young girl no older than 10 stood quietly clutching a microphone that looked oversized in her tiny hands. She had been waiting patiently for her moment. When it came, her voice was soft but steady, cutting through the noise like a ripple on still water. "Do you pray?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, her eyes filled with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. The room froze. Conversations hushed. The kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable began to creep in. This wasn't the kind of question you'd expect at such a formal event. It was personal. Too personal, maybe. The kind of question you could dismiss with a practiced smile or an evasive answer. But he didn't. With a brief pause, the man leaned forward, his demeanor softening. There was no pretense, no script to fall back on. I do, he replied, his voice quieter than usual, almost reflective. Not as often as I should, but yes. The girl didn't stop there. She looked up at him, as if searching for something deeper, something real. What do you say when you pray? She asked. The question hit differently. It wasn't the type of inquiry designed to score points or grab headlines. It was raw, honest. A child asking what most adults are too afraid to ask out loud. For a split second, the weight of the question hung in the air, and for the first time in a long time, it seemed as though the spotlight didn't matter, the cameras didn't matter, the crowd didn't matter, only the question and the answer. I say thank you, he began, the words slow and deliberate as though he was pulling them from a place he hadn't visited in a while. I say thank you for my family, for my health, and for the chance to make a difference. Then, after a pause, he added something that surprised everyone. And sometimes I just ask for guidance, because I don't always have the answers. The room was still. There was no applause, no interruptions, just the quiet realization that for all his power and influence, he was as human as anyone else. It wasn't a rehearsed moment, nor was it designed to tug at heartstrings. But it did. The girl nodded, her face lighting up as though she had just received the most important answer in the world. And perhaps she had. For her, it wasn't about his title or position. It was about connection. One human being sharing something vulnerable with another. What started as a fleeting interaction became a memory etched in the minds of everyone present. It wasn't just the girl who walked away with something meaningful that day. Everyone who witnessed that exchange felt it. The reminder that even the most powerful among us are, at their core, people navigating the same questions, doubts, and hopes as the rest of us. The girl's question lingered in the air, delicate but potent, like a single drop of rain that signaled an oncoming storm. The moment felt fragile, as if the slightest movement could shatter it. A gentle shift in the room began to unfold, not in a dramatic way, but in the way people leaned forward in their seats, in the way even the cameras seemed to zoom in closer, almost involuntarily. The man at the center of it all adjusted his posture slightly, his expression softening in a way that felt almost unfamiliar. This wasn't a rehearsed interaction, and it showed. The question she asked about prayer, about vulnerability, wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't political, it wasn't strategic, and it wasn't even particularly complicated. But maybe that's what made it so powerful. It was simple, and in its simplicity, it carried a weight that no prepared speech could. The girl's voice had trembled slightly, but it was clear she wasn't afraid. If anything, she seemed to have a deeper sense of purpose, one that adults often forget. There was something profoundly disarming about her presence, her courage, and her timing. The audience didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness something rare, a genuine moment. As she lowered the microphone, waiting for his answer, you could almost hear the collective intake of breath. What would he say? Would he deflect, as so many in his position might? Would he offer a polished but impersonal response? For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though even he didn't know. And then slowly, he began to speak. His tone wasn't commanding. As it often was, it wasn't measured or calculated. It was honest. He admitted that prayer wasn't something he had mastered, that it wasn't always a habit, but more of a refuge, something he turned to when the weight of responsibility felt too heavy. He shared that sometimes his prayers were filled with gratitude, and other times they were quiet pleas for clarity in a world that often felt overwhelming. The girl listened intently, her expression unchanged. She wasn't judging him or looking for flaws in his words. She was just listening. And in her quiet presence, something shifted in the room. It wasn't about power or titles anymore. It wasn't even about the event or the cameras. It was about connection. As he finished speaking, the girl smiled. A small, knowing smile that seemed to hold more wisdom than her years should allow. She didn't say anything else, and she didn't need to. Her question had done more than prompt an answer. It had sparked a moment of reflection, not just for him, but for everyone in the room. What do you think her smile meant? Was it approval, understanding, or something else entirely? Moments like these remind us how much we can learn when we truly listen, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment like this? One that felt small but left a lasting impact? Share your story. I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories that matter. The girl's voice, steady and clear, broke through the quiet anticipation in the room. She asked, "What does faith mean to you?" Her words weren't complicated, but the simplicity carried a weight that demanded attention. For a moment, it was as though the world outside had ceased to exist, leaving only her question and the silence that followed. The man, accustomed to quick responses and the pressure of expectations, paused. His confident demeanor softened, replaced by a contemplative stillness. He wasn't searching for a way to impress or avoid. He was searching for something real, something that matched the sincerity of the question. Something that matched. It's a powerful question, he said finally, his tone quieter than usual. There was no rush, no polished edge to his words. Faith is what gives us strength when life becomes overwhelming. It's the belief that even in the hardest times, there's something greater guiding us, even if we don't fully understand it. He paused, glancing briefly at the girl as though measuring her understanding. It's not about having every answer, he continued. It's about trusting that hope exists even when we can't see it clearly. The room remained still, as if the weight of his words was sinking in, one person at a time. The exchange wasn't flashy, nor did it demand fanfare. It was quiet and unassuming, but its impact was undeniable. Those who witnessed it were left to reflect, not just on the words spoken, but on what they meant for their own lives. And perhaps that was the point all along. A reminder that sometimes the simplest questions hold the most profound truths. What does faith mean to you? Does it guide you in difficult moments, or is it something you've struggled to define? Let this story sit with you and share your thoughts below. Remember to stay with us for more moments that make us pause and think about the things that truly matter. As his words settled into the quiet room, the girl remained still, absorbing each one as though they were spoken directly to her heart. Her gaze didn't waver. It was as if the world outside had disappeared, leaving only this shared moment. Slowly, her expression shifted. Not in an exaggerated way, but with the kind of subtlety that carries profound meaning. What began as curiosity softened into something deeper, something that spoke of understanding and connection. Her eyes glistened, and despite her effort to stay composed, A single tear escaped and traced a delicate path down her cheek. She didn't rush to wipe it away. Instead, she let it fall, a silent testament to the impact of his words. It wasn't sadness, and it wasn't joy. It was something far more nuanced, a reflection of the unspoken questions she'd carried long before this moment. The room seemed to hold its breath. Those watching couldn't look away. It wasn't just about what he had said. It was the way she responded, the visible shift in her that made everyone stop and take notice. She wasn't just a little girl anymore. In that moment, she was a mirror, reflecting the kind of vulnerability that connects us all. For her, it felt as though she'd found something she didn't even realize she was looking for, a sense of reassurance, a reminder that even in uncertainty, there's meaning to be found. She blinked, quickly brushing her cheek with her sleeve, or an expression still focused but now tinged with a quiet warmth. The moment lingered, its simplicity making it all the more powerful. It wasn't about grandeur or spectacle. It was about two people, a young girl and a man, sharing a human connection in a way that few had expected, but none would forget. The stillness in the room seemed to mark the end of the moment. But then, just as people thought the exchange was over, the girl did something no one expected. Slowly, she rose from her seat, her small stature somehow carrying a presence that drew every eye. Her hands trembled slightly as she wiped her cheeks, but her voice, though soft, was steady. "I understand now, thank you," she said, her tone so sincere it was almost startling. The words hung in the air, uncomplicated yet profound, and they resonated in a way that no one could have anticipated. It wasn't just a polite response or an obligatory remark. It was genuine. It carried a depth of understanding far beyond her years, as if the simple act of being heard and answered had given her clarity she hadn't known she needed. The room, which had already been silent, grew even quieter, as though everyone was trying to absorb what they had just witnessed. There was no rustle of movement, no cough to break the tension, only the sound of her breathing as she sat back down, her gaze now calm and thoughtful. The man looked at her, and for a brief moment he seemed at a loss for words. Then something shifted in his expression. It wasn't the usual confidence or charisma people associated with him. It was something deeper. He nodded, his voice low and reflective as he spoke, almost to himself. "I think I just learned something from her," he said, pausing to collect his thoughts. "Faith isn't about knowing everything or having all the answers. It's about moments like this, when someone so young can remind us of what's truly important." The simplicity of his statement caught the audience off guard. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't designed to inspire applause, and yet it did. Not with clapping, but with a kind of collective awe that rippled through everyone present. Oh, so for the girl, the exchange wasn't just a conversation. It was a moment of connection, one that left its mark on everyone who witnessed it. And for him, it was a reminder, one that came from an unlikely source, but perhaps that's why it mattered so much. How often do we find the most meaningful lessons in the least expected moments? This story isn't just about faith. It's about the power of listening, understanding, and being open to learning from anyone, no matter their age or background. What do you think the girl meant when she said, "I understand now"? Share your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. As the girl turned and began to walk away, there was a noticeable shift in her demeanor. Her steps were steady, no longer weighed down by hesitation or uncertainty. It was as though she had found an answer, not just in his words, but in the sincerity of the moment. Her small frame, now imbued with a quiet confidence, seemed to carry a sense of peace that was almost tangible. The room remained hushed, the weight of what had unfolded still hanging in the air. People weren't just watching a little girl leave the stage. They were witnessing the impact of a single moment of truth. Faith wasn't just an idea anymore. It had taken form, a shared understanding that bridged differences, silenced doubt, and reminded everyone of what truly matters. In that instant, it wasn't about who had power or influence. It was about the courage to ask, the humility to listen, and the strength to reflect. A child had reminded the world of something adults often forget: the importance of honesty, of vulnerability, and of being open to learning from even the most unexpected voices. The music softened, shifting to a hopeful melody that underscored the quiet beauty of the moment. There were no grand gestures or dramatic exits, just a little girl with a newfound sense of understanding, and a man who, for all his influence, had been reminded of his own humanity. And as she walked away, a thought lingered. What if we all dared to ask the questions we've been afraid to speak? What if we paused to truly listen, not just with our ears, but with our hearts? How much could we discover, not just about others, but about ourselves? As the moment passed and the room began to return to its usual rhythm, a quiet reflection settled over everyone who had witnessed it. This wasn't just about a girl asking a question or a man offering an answer. It was about something far more profound. A rare reminder that amidst all the noise of life, the simplest voices often carry the deepest truths. In that brief exchange, something shifted. The barriers we often put up, the roles we play, the titles we carry, seemed to fade away, leaving only the raw humanity of the interaction. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't rehearsed, but maybe that's why it mattered so much. In a world so often consumed by distractions, there's a lesson here: the power of listening. Listening not just to respond, but to truly understand. What if we allowed ourselves to pause, to consider, and to embrace the questions that challenge us, not for answers alone, but for the insight they bring? So here's something for all of us to think about. What's the most powerful question you've ever asked? Was it met with an answer that changed your perspective? Or did it leave you searching for your own truth? Let's keep this conversation going. Share your story in the comments. Let's inspire one another to ask more, to listen more, and to find meaning in the moments that truly matter. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are more stories waiting. Stories that remind us how the smallest moments can make the biggest impact. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.